Hey, welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Sharice, and this video is for you if you want a happy and healthy marriage, even if you've never been married like me, or you want to learn from the mistakes of your divorce and improve your next relationship. I took a lot of notes from a bunch of different videos. I am a bit obsessed with why people get divorced. I'm letting that go as I focus more on what does it take to maintain a happy and healthy relationship long term, right? Talking like more than 5 years, more than 10 years, 20 plus years. How do people stay happy, in love with their partner, choosing them every day? That's really my focus with this video. So I'm gonna also have summarized tips from the videos that I watched on what they are suggesting people to do to maintain a happy relationship. I watched a couple of videos from Anton Daniels, who I think took up some space after Kevin Samuels died, on the Black Manosphere. I think he talks mostly about relationships, marriage. He's married, and I think he promotes that. His premise for why people get divorced is that they should have never been together in the first place. And the example that he uses is Derrick Jaxn and his wife, Jaxn. And you know, if from my perspective, yeah, this would make sense as one example of why people would get divorced. From the very beginning in Derrick and Jaxn's marriage, Derrick was lying and cheating on her from the very beginning. Like from the time they were dating, he was lying to her. He had multiple women, and that never changed even after they got married. Even after they had children, he continued to engage in this double life. You know, you all saw him on YouTube. If you're watching this video, you've probably seen like the whole blow up. I think Tasha K exposed it, and then lots of YouTubers talked about it. And then Denia did a podcast with Dear Future Wifey, where she talked about like her experience, and you could see she had a lot of trauma. Derrick, you know, abused her, and sort of never embraced love in his life. Because how can you really be embracing love if you are saying you're married to a woman but sleeping with other women, right? It's like you don't even love yourself. So that as an example makes a lot of sense. Lots of people ignore the red flags when they're first getting to know someone. They think after commitment it will change. They think after marriage it will change. They think after, you know, the kids that he's gonna get serious. But in reality, people should be picking better partners. They should be picking someone of good character. I like to say pick someone whose flaws you can live with, so that you are not hoping that they change, because people don't really change that much over time. It's true that people evolve and some of their interests or desires change, but generally the personality that is ingrained does not change in adulthood. People usually become more of themselves as more time goes on. Anton Daniels tried to use an example with grandparents who stuck together because they picked a person, they didn't have all these options, and they stayed together. They knew who they were, they likely grew up together, and so they accepted that person fully for who they were. When I watched him say this, I saw in his eye the flicker of, I'm actually saying some BS. Like I'm kind of saying some mess, but let me just keep going with it because I want to make a point that doesn't really make sense. It doesn't really have logic based in it. A lot of the reason why our grandparents stayed together was because women had no choice. Because women could only, in the context of a marriage, explore things. You know, lots of places wouldn't hire women. Women were seen as an extension of the man. They could not have a whole life for themselves by themselves. And if they tried, they were usually ostracized. It was something that was very difficult. These kinds of women were extremely poor if they did not have a husband. So it was in a woman's best interest to stay in a marriage, no matter what the man was doing. And men got away with a lot during this time because women really had no other options. But since then, there's been the women's liberation movement. There's been more push for gender equality in the workplace. And thankfully, women have options. It's one of the reasons why I can still be single in my 30s, because I can pay my own bills. I don't need a man to pay my own bills, right? I value partnership. I'm preparing myself for marriage. But in the way that my great-grandparents needed to stay together, like for safety, any type of security or stability, I don't think they would even be able to fathom a single woman at this point in time choosing whether she wants to get married or not, choosing what age she wants to get married. And then it reminded me of a new thought I've been having about cheating. I've always said since I was a teenager, cheating is not a deal breaker for me. In fact, I've never been cheated on, which is strange because I have no idea what it really feels like to like suspect a man and then, look through his stuff and find out that, oh my gosh, this person that has been committed to you for all this time has been cheated. I don't even know what that's like. But on the surface, I think I was trying to explain cheating is a symptom of a greater problem. And more so, now that I understand, whenever I hear of like couples where there's cheating, I think of the start of the disconnection between the two people and how people have such difficulty, me as a former people pleaser, difficulty asking for what I wanted, difficulty communicating my feelings, and people not saying what they really want, right? That goes for men and women, because I believe, I don't have a study for this, right? But I believe men and women cheat at a similar rate as each other. Women, it's just oftentimes more emotional, so it's not as easy to find out, but I think they cheat at similar rates. But the disconnection between the couples is where the cheating starts. There is a frustration, there is a, I've been asking for this, even though you maybe haven't been asking for it, but there's an expectation that this relationship is not what I want it to be, and the two people have not figured out like how to solve the problem, how to become close together, how to express love with each other, even if they're frustrated with a thing or an aspect of the person. That I think leads to cheating. And then cheating is a good excuse to divorce, right? Like Jeannie Mai and Jeezy. They, I think, is a really good example because there was no cheating. And I think on the outside, a lot of people, when they read about, what the divorce was about, they're like, this doesn't really sound like someone to divorce for. And I would argue that even if he had cheated, it probably wasn't a good reason to divorce. I think, the public aspect of cheating, the embarrassment, all that stuff, the disrespect, it makes sense for why someone would call it quits. Like, I understand why cheating is a deal breaker for so many people. But the things that they're arguing about, the things that they're in disagreement about can be solved. A bigger issue, however, is the character, which somebody else in another video brought up, the character of the person. Like, what are their actual values? So Jeannie Mai, I think, really, really values being seen in the public space in a positive way. Regardless of what the reality is in her life, she wants her Instagram to be photogenic. She wants to give the appearance of happy, healthy, whole. She wants people to think she's in a really great, wonderful, luxurious relationship, even though that might not be true. Which reminds me of, because Anton Daniels, I think he talked about, I don't know why I can't remember the twin name from Sister, but the one that divorced her husband, Corey Hardrick, I think is his name, in that there is a persona that these women give on social media that doesn't seem to be reflective of the truth of their reality, but that this value system of being seen and validated on social media is important. And perhaps the men in their lives didn't value that as well. And so it's one thing to say, you know what, I don't really care about that stuff, but I want you to do you. But if you're in a partnership with somebody who has a completely different value, such as privacy, right? Such as, I don't want to be on social media. I don't want to showcase our lives in this way. I want to live this way, right? My value system says I want to live this way. Then you can see that, in fact, maybe these people should have never partnered for a long-term relationship, because when you look at their values, their long-term values, the way they want to live their life daily, it is not in agreement. So the tip here is to pick someone whose character and values align with yours. Another video I watched was by a creator called Ninika, where she had lots of clips of Rebecca Lynn Pope's, her viral video about why she stopped matchmaking. And that video has since been taken down. I think she privated her video, not Ninika, Rebecca Lynn Pope, who I follow and really enjoy, privated that video. I think when she did so, it had over 1 million views on it, but the manosphere was really using it to attack Black women, like in general, when Rebecca was talking about a specific kind of Black woman that most of us don't have access to. This is a Black woman who makes much, much more than most people. So not even just, 6 figures, right? We're talking like mid 6 figures, at least $300,000 a year. She might be making $100,000 a month. This type of woman who wants to pick a man the way men pick women, right? and thinks that, I can get the looks, I can get the body, he's gonna have as much money as me or more, and I don't have to be or do anything in a certain way in order to be in this relationship or maintain this relationship. So it was a lot of, the people now are saying delulu. It was a lot of not really being based in reality, not understanding men, wanting things to be a certain way, even though in practice, men have remained mostly the same. My hope for men is that they continue to evolve and see themselves more as just, provider and protector, because there's so much more than that. They have the whole human experience, and women are more than just their femininity. So I'm hoping for more balance there, in a few decades. But the specifics of that type of woman, I think, need to stay as specific to that type of woman. Most women are not like that, and so that's not the cause of most divorces, right? In fact, a lot of those women don't get married because most men, they have this difficulty shifting from boss babe to wife, right? And wife has a certain number of responsibilities that falls under it, and you kind of if you're not I know 50-50 relationships are a thing, right? And so if you all make decisions together, that's one thing. But at the end of the day, somebody has to be the deal breaker. And so who's gonna be the deal breaker? All relationships take sacrifice, they take compromise. You're not gonna always get your way. And so this type of woman, I don't think is really used to that, because in business, she gets what she wants. She's pushed and, been determined and persevered to get all the things. And so that expectation, I think, is often in the marriage. And then once that behavior has been done, then the man starts to become docile, maybe more docile than he was in the beginning, and defers to her to make the decisions, which then, I don't know, just makes things even worse in the relationship. And so they end up breaking up. I wouldn't say these people didn't belong together or shouldn't have never been together, but I think more conversations around, what do you want this marriage to look like? Who is the deal breaker? What happens if we disagree on X, right? Big things like kids, living together. Although you should have those, big conversations before marriage, but people change their minds. And so then if I had one kid and we had agreed to 3, what is the conversation now on what we do with kids? What is the compromise going to be? But generally the point here is about unrealistic expectations in marriage. Women thinking that any type of man is, can be made into a husband if you love him enough, when really you need to make sure he loves you enough, right? We can both love each other, right? But I think it's really, really important for a man to be crazy about you. I mean, just wanting to do whatever it takes to maintain this relationship, because all of that, I think, because women are socialized to be caring and nurturing, all of that comes more easily in practice to women. So pick a man that's crazy about you. Understand, really listen, this video, I'm compiling information that I've understood from the internet, from people I think, have some sense, or are referencing someone who has some sense. But understanding that marriage is labor, and the people who are really honest about marriage, they will tell you it is not the easiest thing in the world. And in fact, there can be some really, really rough times in marriage, but that in essence, it is worth it. It's really worth it. The pros of marriage are beautiful and wonderful, but they do come with some cons, and you should know about them. I think it's fair for me to also mention in this video, some of the themes that came up, with Iyanla Vanzant and that woman and the bus, the whole bus driver conversation, and men wanting women who are feminine and women wanting men who are masculine, and Black women specifically being told they're too masculine and in relation, all this stuff, right? I think it's fair to ask, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Are the problems we see in modern day relationships because women are too masculine? Is it because men have stopped being as masculine? Is it because, in the Black community, there is the historical context of slavery and how Black women have always had to work? And so where was the space to just be docile or live the soft life in marriage historically? And while I do think that there is perhaps a need for both sexes to be more balanced in how they express their masculinity and femininity. I do think it's overhyped on the internet that Black women are so masculine. Similar to the very high achieving, right? The Black woman who makes on her own $1 million a year or something. I think this hyper masculinization of Black women is a big product of how society views Black women, and right, as like independent go-getters, wanting to succeed, because what has the other option been? There's not really been another option but to push and get more out of life. So in that sense, I really challenge you to not give into scarcity mode, to not view yourself as all or nothing, and just to find the balance between how you express yourself as a woman. If you are happy, if you are at peace, I think you're doing it right. There's so many different ways to show up as a woman, and the hyper feminine one or the hyper masculine one are both extremes, and most of us are somewhere in between. Another video I watched was by Chris Williamson. He had a clip with someone he was interviewing where they cited the Gottman study. Now, the Gottman Institute has been doing couples therapy work for decades. And so I think it would be a really great resource for you if you're wanting to improve your relationship, your long-term relationship, or your marriage. But the study she cited was about the predictors for divorce. So the Gottmans did, I think they had like 10,000 people in this study that they observed. So I think the data is pretty well researched, and they could predict which couples were going to get divorced by watching them argue. And so the style of their arguing was predictive of whether these folks would call it quits. And a lot of it was, how are they reconnecting after an argument? How are they having an argument? So a lot of arguing for couples, right, is I want to be connected to you. I want to feel connected to you. And so often one person in the relationship is expressing that desire. And so they might say something in the argument where it's an opportunity for their partner to touch them, to acknowledge their feelings, to come closer, and the partner doesn't do it. And so when that goes on long enough, right? So this is not they picked the wrong person, right? This is we haven't learned how to fight. Like, we need to learn how to have disagreements and then come back. Because I think some people think you're not supposed to have any arguments in relationships. I don't think you're supposed to have like screaming matches or big blow up fights. Like, maybe those things happen once every decade for, healthy couples. But generally speaking, you all are going to disagree on things because you're two separate human beings. And so how do you all solve the disagreement? How do you all reconnect after? And in couples that consistently have that disconnection and they're not able to reconnect after so many disagreements, there's a lot of discontent and resentment that builds up. And once those things, build, it's very difficult to get the relationship back. Imagine, these were people that went through the honeymoon time. I was so in love with you. I love the way you burped. I love the way you walked. I just love the way you did things. And then by the time so many hurt has been built on, the resentment is there. I think the Gottmans call it like the four horsemen of the apocalypse, because once those things are there, like, you're just annoyed with your partner for breathing, for eating, for doing, for just being themselves. Like, everything about them starts to annoy you because you're so disconnected from them that it's just like, if you could just get this person from in front of me, I would be done. And this goes back to like what I was saying about like the cheating part. To me, it's this buildup of disconnection. I think that love is an action word. And you have to be showing the acts of love over time consistently for people to feel the love. Like, you can't just say, I love you for the first year, 2 years, and then stop saying it. Like, you have to keep doing it. Like, if you all went out on dates, if you all had, travel as a part of your relationship, or, these hobbies or puzzle building, like, you have to keep doing them. You cannot stop doing them just because you all have been together 5, 10, 15 years. You have to keep showing the love for the person. But an interesting thing that Chris and his interviewee were talking about was this idea that in the modern world, so many people are not bringing their authentic self to their relationship. They are, in fact, wearing a mask from the very beginning until maybe a year after they've already been married, such that the people that they're with don't even know how to love them accurately. So I don't know if I would say this is marrying the wrong person, like you ignoring the red flags. But I would say, I think it is important to show your whole self to a person, right? If the example that the lady gave was, if you value labels, right? If you want there to be a label on your relationship, tell your partner that, like tell the person you're dating that. And if that person doesn't also value that, I would say maybe it's time to like separate. But how would you even know if you never said it, right? If you're not being your whole self, if you're not really genuinely telling people what you like, if you're not being vulnerable with people, how can they actually love you? And then they made a point about viewing your partner as a rival, like somebody that you have to compete with, which was strange to me because I'm not really familiar with competing in a relationship. And I think maybe the only context I have is like Simone Biles and her husband. And perhaps, I don't know, is it wanting to be seen by the other person as valuable, or wanting the validation from society that I'm more important? I didn't really get it. But that in terms of like people fighting and wanting to win, like you want to win the argument when it's us against the problem, like there's no winning here. If you win and I lose, then our relationship loses. I watched another video from someone that I think is a therapist who gave some of the wildest information that I've seen in a long time from somebody who looks like they're a professional. He sounded like he wanted marriages to be back to what they were in the 1920s, maybe the 1950s, about, you know, marriage was supposed to be just for the context of raising children, and all the other things that people put on top of it, like love and passion and fulfillment, are not supposed to be there. And so basically marriage needs to go back to the way it used to be. And so he compared marriage to work, and not just work, not marriage is work, marriage is work, but he compared marriage to a job. Like when you go on your job, like you don't have to get along with your coworkers, you just need to get your job done. And to me, that is such a limited way of viewing self and world. And in fact, I think because, you know, I'm so spiritually inclined, we are supposed to evolve. The construct of marriage is supposed to evolve, and people are supposed to be able to add things and minus things to it to make it a better union. And another video about understanding divorce helped put some context in what this man was saying, because he wasn't just talking all nonsense, right? I think at the end of the day, it is true. Your partner cannot be everything, right? You can have, I think, passion and raise kids and have a fulfilling marriage, but your partner cannot be everything to you. I also think it's very important to have a tribe, to have a community that supports your marriage, because marriage has such difficult times. You spend so much time with this one person and you are evolving together. Like just being yourself is difficult, right? Just doing what you say you're going to do is difficult. Having to deal with that with a whole other person, with life events happening, I think is challenging. Having a group of people who believe in your marriage, who are rooting for you all to succeed, because there's a reciprocal benefit to everyone. You all staying together helps the community remain stronger. You all being in a happy marriage helps raise, better equipped children to go out into, the world. And then that marriage can also benefit other marriages. But that does mean having those difficult conversations about sacrifice, who's sacrificing what, when. And one of the people I watched made the point about, there being equal sacrifice. I'm not sure. I've not been married, right? So I don't know, what does equal sacrifice mean? Women are the ones that go into childbirth. I don't know what equal sacrifice really means or looks like in a marriage. But it was an interesting point. I think people talking about what works for me now, what I think is gonna work later, and then having that conversation again about, do I feel like I'm doing too much? Do I feel like I need to come back to balance? Are you feeling happy and comfortable where you are? Or do we need to change some things? There was also a point made about childcare, that even moms who are stay-at-home moms, it's not free work, right? It's work, and people are paid whole salaries to watch other people's children. So demeaning any sort of, child labor, just because it's the mother, I think is also important for people to consider viewing rearing children as legitimate work that's extremely effortful. At the end of the day, I think these practices are much more easier in theory than in practice once you get into a long-term relationship. You realize the challenges of being kind when it's most important to the people that are most important. But I think it's beneficial for us to actually put the work in to maintain happy and healthy relationships. I would strongly recommend checking the description box for links, especially from the Gottman Institute. And then just reminding ourselves to be kindest to the people closest to us, especially the person who has committed themselves to us. Be as nice to them as you possibly can be, right? Be the most kind. Focus more on their strengths and the wonderful things that they bring to you, that they give to the world, than you do on their flaws or their mistakes. Let me know what you think in the comments. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel, and thank you for watching.